Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is episode 65. 65. I guess we can't go wrong with Bart Oates, the New York Giants of the Sports Consiglieres podcast. Along with me always is my friend, my pal. I guess still the voice of Woodridge football. Am I correct?
That is correct.
And 11 years as the girls' varsity coach in Woodridge. Is that correct?
Girls soccer, yes.
Girls soccer. Sorry, girls soccer.
First official day today, yes.
All right. What time is practice?
Practice is 6:45 a.m.
6:45 a.m. Jeez, my buddy, my pal, Jerry Calla. Jerry, how you doing this fine afternoon?
Good. What's happening, Jimmy? Nice Bart Oates reference there.
Mm,
Good way to start the program.
All
Coming
right.
off a nice, solid Brad DeLuiso appearance last episode.
Yeah. So recap that episode. What did you think about Brad? I think he was an
I I thought he
awesome
was
guest.
excellent.
Yeah. I mean, very, very studious. I mean, 11 years in NFL. He bounced around until and it's surprising. Like Dan Reeves kind of gave him how much loyalty Dan Reeves had, saw the potential in him that and Dan Reeves got crucified for having two kickers on the team at that time because you go back to the early '90s. I mean, Florida State, but was it Jimmy? Who was the coach of Florida State back then?
Bobby Bowden.
Bobby Bowden was crucified for not offering a place kicker a football scholarship. So I mean that really wasn't part of the game. But Dan Reeves offering having two kickers on a roster, that was big.
Yeah, I thought Brad was an excellent guest. Very nice, good personality. Good sense of humor. Really gave us, some insight. He wasn't happy though with you pestering him for stock tips, but that's another
Yeah,
story.
no. Well, that's why I wanted him on the show, but I guess
Yeah,
that wasn't
so
going to happen.
your portfolio is in good shape, though. He did say that.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. But hey, turning to this weekend, they had the Snoopy Bowl recap. Jets Giants. Did you watch the game at all? And
Absolutely.
what was your initial thoughts?
I was very impressed. I thought all four quarterbacks did a good job, which is, again, when's the last time, you could say that in Giant land? It was refreshing. You know, um, Obviously, you had Wilson. He got, I believe, 4 series. Dart did a great job, completed 13 passes in a row. Wilson had the moon ball to our good friend Pat Monahan's favorite Giant now, which is Collins,
Oh
and
yeah,
Bo Collins, and
the Golden Domer. Yeah,
yeah, and again, Dart played well. I like the moxie. I like the intangibles that he brings. I like the passion and excitement. But there's a lot of other things that happen in the game. I thought the line did fairly well. A line without Andrew Thomas played fairly well. Evan Neal, really looked really good at
yeah,
guard. That's probably something that they should have explored sooner. But, hey, where he was drafted, they did give him every opportunity to be an NFL tackle, and that just didn't happen. And again, there was a lot of good things. If you had to ask me for a negative, the Jets kind of ran the ball a little bit on them, early on. But, again, coming away, with a 31-point performance, the Giant offense has been brutal. I know it's only preseason. We did see a lot of things, and one of the things that we saw was good pass protection and the ability to get the ball down the field, which hasn't happened the last few years. And again, this is all without Neighbors. This is without Andrew Thomas. So, there is a lot of positives going on. And, ultimately, listen, Carl Banks touched upon this, in the telecast. For me, it was a big treat, having Bob Papa call the game with not only Carl Banks as usual, but with Phil Simms. That
yeah.
was a good treat, always hearing those guys and getting their insight. But, the schedule is the schedule. And, this team is definitely more talented, than past Giant teams. And, hopefully the Achilles heel, which has been the offensive line, is no longer the case. And, the one play, and I talked about this morning with somebody. You had an 80-yard completion from Wilson to Collins. And on that play, and they broke this down on the replay, the pocket that Wilson was able to negotiate, that play to execute that play, and the time he had, it was very impressive to see.
Yeah,
Obviously,
he was able to survey the field. You're right. So
yeah, I mean,
that's
he went
kind
through
of
the progressions, but I think in the past, and I don't want to criticize the previous quarterback, I think that would have resulted into a run. I
yeah.
think in that situation, Daniel Jones, would have tucked the ball and ran the ball. And, there's a lot of positives coming out of Giant Land. And I know everybody, I run into an Eagles fan every morning and, he's all over me. He's, oh, yeah, you're getting excited over 2 preseason wins. But, I think it's what's going you know, on the field, what was going on, during training camp when I visited twice. And ultimately, a lot of the error of their ways in the past, seem to be going in the right direction, which is again, 4 quarterbacks came in, played very, very well. If I was a Jet fan, the big negative coming out of the game is Fields didn't look too good. They did run the ball well, but I mean, getting back to the Giants, all 4 of the quarterbacks played well. They were able to move the ball, and that there's something to be said in that. That quarterback room is alive. It's well. I think these guys are pushing each other. And, for a guy like Winston, and I know nobody's talking about this, for a guy with his pedigree, he's been in the league, he's a veteran, for him to compete with the third string offense and to be productive, I think that says a lot about him, as a professional. And, ultimately, these are all things that are a reflection, of Brian Dable.
Yeah, and I think it was pretty telling that the 3 quarterbacks walked in together: Dart, Winston, and DeVito in pregame. Just shows how solid that room is. And
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
what I take away, it was Jackson Dart's debut at MetLife Stadium. I think the first time he was there was at a Zach Bryan concert, and it was one of the same concert I went to. But you know, the couple question marks they had coming in was Evan Neal. You touched upon that. I think that he kind of found his spot in the guard position, new position. I know he had one miscue, but it looks like for the most part that's where he's going to be, and that's going to solidify the line. Jordan Neal had the one catch for 21 yards. He's a speedster, so they're going to have to get him. And I know they target him another time, but that's seems like the relationship with him and Wilson. Wilson's trying to get him going. Also was impressed with Kayvon Thibodeau. You talk about the telecast with Papa Banks and Sims. Sims alluded to the fact that Thibodeau is probably a little bit slighted that all this attention is going around other players on the defense except for him. So I think his level of play is been raised, and I think with Carter on the opposite side and the interior of the line being well, that his play is going to increase. So, and what could you say about Dart? I mean, he looks like the real deal. Looks like he's the complete package what they're looking for, and I think that going forward, I think if you're a young GM in the NFL and you're inheriting a quarterback, unless it's a Hall of Famer, I mean, because Schoen inherited Daniel Jones and he tried to work with him and it just didn't work out. I think that most GMs now are going to look at that as a template and say, we got to trade away all my own guy. And it looks like Dart was their own guy. And not only that, I would have to say Schoen and his staff, the level of talent that they have on the roster. I know it's preseason and everything else, but I've been watching football a long time. I mean, you can kind of see preseason players. You can kind of see who's kind of on the verge and who's not. But I mean, all the tight ends and the wide receivers. I mean, they have a lot of talent at those positions. And if they're not going to make the Giants roster, I think they'll be on an NFL roster. So I think that attribute to his team and then how much that they invested in researching all these players. So I like the way the team is going. You talk about the Jets. I think Fields, fourth coordinator in 4 years, looks like he struggled. And they're going to be, looks like run heavy, defense heavy with Aaron Glenn. But I think that the teams are going to line up and they're going to stop the run. They're going to have to make Justin Fields stop him, which I think it's going to be a challenge for him. But I mean, he's got the talent, but I don't know. He's just not in sync. So.
Well, I mean, like you said, I mean, getting back to one of your early points, I believe you were referencing Jalen Hyatt and Wilson. Jalen Hyatt is a very intriguing option. Obviously, because of his speed, he is kind of underperformed, and so far his training camp and his inability to stay on the field, I don't know how far that set him back in that wide receiver room. But Russell Wilson is trying to bring him to bring something out of his career, because the Giants did move up to get him. He had a great college career. They connected. The speed is tantalizing to make him a deep threat, but so far he hasn't been on the field enough, in my opinion. And I still think, I don't think that he's in danger of getting cut, but the Giants, like you said, are going to have some interesting decisions to make at tight end, at wide receiver. There's a few guys that bring some special teams intangibles at receiver. You got little Jordan Humphrey there, having a pretty decent camp, and really Hyatt, I think, really needs to establish himself a little bit more. And unfortunately, there's one preseason game left, and I don't know how much, how much how much he's going to play. I think he has to play because, he missed the first game. But anyway, as far as Joe Shane, Shane has done, they came in, they inherited Daniel Jones. They rolled the dice. They got a wild card win out of him, and then things kind of went to pieces, the next 2 years. And ultimately, I think any GM and any head coach coming into a job, and I think when you remember when all the guys that interviewed to be the general manager of the Giants, there's not a GM or a head coach worth his weight that doesn't want their own guy. And, now they have their own guy. And I think the reset button was set. I had a conversation yesterday with somebody, and I think Shane's performance, if you will, in last year's draft and now this year's draft, you have Carter, Alexander, in addition to Dart. There's some pieces, Marcus Bowe there, probably might play a bigger role, in giving that offensive line some depth. But, again, you have to like what Shane has done these last two drafts without question.
Yeah, and it's been great. And also, I think you talk about wide receiver. I like, and getting back, I think I like the nicknames too. I think that football's got a lot of nicknames. So I like Juice Wells. You got Turbo Miller, and then you got Motor Singletary. So you got a lot of nicknames going out there. So I mean, Wells and Miller. I mean, they're going to be tough to see. You got Gunnar Olszewski. You had Dre Bly's son. He made a nice catch in the game. So it's going to be a lot of decisions. But a lot of these kids are going to get picked up somewhere else. And it'll be interesting to see with the four quarterbacks. I know you always bust my chops about Tommy DeVito, but I mean, he looked good. He made a nice throw over the top. He looked good. And then Russell Wilson, he threw that ball 60 yards in the air for a 37-year-old quarterback. I mean, they look good. It's optimist. There's optimism in Giantland,
without a doubt. And it's definitely a different vibe. And like you said, I mean, it's always, at the end of the day, it's always good for a general manager to have to make these difficult decisions. Like, Dante Miller, Turbo Miller, I think there has to be some place on this roster, for him. Wide receiver, that's a whole nother story, because, you're basically, you're coming in, you're talking about a room, you're talking about a group that has many established guys. You're starting off with the first three, Neighbors, Robinson, and Slayton. So there's, wide receiver, Hyatt is really an enigma at this point. I mean, what is he going to be? Is he going to be a deep threat? Can he contribute? Can he get on the field? And there's some other guys that are making Collins, Washington, they're making a strong case, to make this roster. And, I think the tight end situation is going to be interesting as well. With all that being said, defensively, you had another situation where Deonte Banks, wasn't on the field, didn't play. Flott played. He did okay. I don't think he did lights out. But you had him and a Debo. And again, Banks, really could have used those reps. He did play a lot, against Buffalo, but he was held out of the game. And again, there's a lot of guys, that, they're going to be knocking on their door, and hopefully they can answer. Banks is one of them. I don't think he'll wind up starting. I think Flott will wind up starting. I don't think Evan Neal will start off the bat, because I think Van Roten is going to be very, very, very at this point tough to replace for him to really win that job from Van Roten. But however, Evan Neal is an absolute freak. He's a tremendous athlete. He's really, really a big guy that moves well. He's looked good at guard, and at some point, that's going to be tough to keep him on the bench all year. I just don't think he starts right away.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I think I agree with you on that. I think that Van Roten starts there. I think they got too much money invested in him. I think he's established, and Neal's got to learn the position. So, is Andrew Thomas worry you, or I think that they're just keeping him at bay with the?
Again, the one thing that you have seen in these first two preseason games that Dable has flipped the script, if you will, is that he has the starters playing a lot more than last year and the last 2 years. And the Giants, the last 2 years have really, really, really struggled coming out of the gate. They forgot that they to show up against Dallas, and it's just last year's Minnesota performed opening day against Minnesota, 6 points. So now you see Dable's approach. I don't think anybody that's an established player is going to play at all on Thursday. They have New England coming in. But the first two preseason games, he played the starters more than he did the last 2 years. And, that worries me about Andrew Thomas is that he has not played a snap all camp. He's, in the rehabbing stages. And I just didn't like what Shane said when training camp started. And I really don't expect to see him week 1.
Well, it remains to be seen. But, I mean, I like the way the position was going. Looks like, darts are the real deal. What would be the situation where, because if you look in Pittsburgh, Fields started, he was 4-2, and then was struggling a little bit, and then Tomlin made the change to Wilson. Now the script is flipped. You have Wilson starting. What would it take to see Dart get inserted in the lineup? And we talked about this in previous shows about Eli and Kurt Warner. So, one, do you think Dart is ready? Because some people are now starting to have that equation that he's ready to play on day one, which I agree with you. I think that you said Wilson deserves to be QB1. So what would be the situation you would see where Dart would come in, or if he would come in, or is it going to be shelled for the season?
Well, the three scenarios that you laid out, Kurt Warner basically came to the Giants as a Super Bowl champion, right? But basically needing a reboot of his career. And Kurt Warner got off to a very good start. The Giants were in playoff contention. They had a winning record. And Tom Coughlin decided, Eli was ready, or the time was ready to put Eli in. And he made a very difficult decision, which was, he basically was giving up the opportunity for the Giants to compete for a playoff spot. But the greater good was down the road, which was the greater good. The second scenario, Mike Tomlin really didn't replace Fields with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson came back from being injured. So That was a little bit different. The scenario here is Russell Wilson is QB1. I think he needs to win games. He needs to win games immediately. And I don't think sitting Dart is necessarily a bad thing. If they start out 0-4, I think that answers the question. You'll see him obviously much sooner than later, because the adage is if you're going to lose, right, you're going to lose with the rookie and let Dart get experience. Russell Wilson comes out. You got to remember, this is a very unique situation with the Shane Dable regime, is that they're basically they have no reassurance after this season, right? So at some point you have to win football games. So you look at, and Patricia Traynor and I discussed this when we had her on, and she hit the nail on the head. She said, you're talking about Tom Coughlin, who basically had the leash, he had the long rope, right? He was coming into, they were starting, right? This is like Shane and Dable hit the reset button. They have to win games. So if they feel, I don't want to throw numbers out, but, let's say, for example, the Giants are 2-2. Let's say, for example, and then they start looking, okay, these next few weeks, Russell gives us the best, puts us in the best opportunity to win games. I think they stick with Russell Wilson. I don't think that these 2 preseason games have, besides with Giant fans, right? I don't think that has changed Dable's thinking on when to put him in or when to slide him in as the starting quarterback. Because again, now you have to remember, once you name him the starter, and this is why I give Coughlin's decision was very, very, very tough, right? Because most coaches in the NFL are like, hey, you know what? We're going to make the playoffs. You never know, blah, blah, blah. Once you go to Dart, you can't go back to Wilson. There's no going back.
Correct. Yeah.
He was drafted in the first round. He's your future. So to answer
And
your question,
he's your guy too.
I don't think these 2 preseason games have expedited the process other than making the Giant fan feel a lot better, right? Knowing that he's coming down the road. And I think it validates them trading up for him. That's it. I don't think Dable is sitting right now saying, oh, you know what? These first 2 games, you know what? He's in week 3. They have to win games. They start out 0-2, right? They start out 0-3. I don't think he'll put them in a week. Let's say if they start out 0-2, they're not putting him in prime time against the Chiefs, right? But if they start out 0-3, week 4 is a possibility coming back to with the Chargers. But again, you have to win football games. This is a different situation that this regime is in because they have no assurances past this season.
Well, I mean, I think that I think they ride Wilson for the majority of the season. I think that they have too much invested in him. They had too much invested in Dart, like I said, they got to win games. That's the biggest. So,
I still stand by my analysis, if you will, that I think Wilson's going to have a good year.
Oh, I think so. I mean,
what that means, listen, Wilson having a good year and the Giants winning games, that could be 2 totally different scenarios. Wilson could be having a good year, and that might not translate into wins, which would mean at some point Dart is going to be inserted as the starter. If he's having a good year and they're winning games, it's going to happen later than sooner, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I think that he's going to be a starter for quite some time. I mean, I hope they don't end up 0-4 because I don't want to see Dart get rushed in there, and I don't want to see another 0-4 season. So I don't want to see I want to come October that realize that the season's over again. So, but a lot of optimism there. What about the Jets? You want to dive into the Jets at all? I know Quentin Williams didn't play. Looks like they're going to run the ball, but it looks like Fields is just not comfortable with the receiving core yet.
Yeah, again, I know, a lot of people are the Jets are in the market for a backup. Tyrod Taylor has the knee issue, but as far as I think what Aaron Glenn and Phil Simms and Carl Banks and they kind of covered this. It was no secret. Aaron Glenn has made it clear they're going to try to run the ball. They're going to try to be a physical football team, and they're going to try to, as they used to say, he's going to try to make the Jets, as they used to say, an NFC East team where they're going to play defense and they're going to be able to run the ball. I still think, Fields didn't look good. I still think he's going to have it. I think it's a good fit that he's there. There's really going to be nobody pressing him to come in. And
Yeah,
I know you hear the adage like competition drives, like the Giants, like their quarterback room, competition's driving them. But I think Fields in stop number 3, I think it's better for him knowing that he's the starter and he's going to be the starter probably, for the entire season unless things go, really, really bad. Now, again, that division, you got Buffalo, New England should be better. The schedule's favorable. Who knows what's going to happen in Miami? It seems that there's always, some saga going on with them.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
I like the attitude and I like the approach that Aaron Glenn has shown so far. I think, what he's trying to establish in his culture. He was a Jet. He was in that building, with Parcells. He was there after Parcells and before Parcells, so to speak, or whatever. And, the bottom line is, he knows, there's a lot of things that have taken place that, need to change. And, there's a lot of positives to be, there's a lot of positives. I think they made the right decision moving on from Rodgers, and I thought the Field signing was a good signing. Time will tell. And that week one, there's going to be a lot of theater there. That's going to be an interesting matchup with them and the Steelers in week one.
Yeah. Well, I talk about the AFC East. I mean, from what the reports are, I forget where I was watching today, but NFL Network or ESPN, they're just talking. I guess Detroit and Miami had their, preseason game, and it looked like coming out of Detroit saying that there's some chinks in the armor coming out of Miami with their coach McDaniel. And I was watching Hard Knocks last night, just preparing for the show, and then they're 0-2. I don't know. I mean, Buffalo. I mean, it seems like their year, but I don't know. It's just, it just doesn't look like the enthusiasm is there again. So I mean, Allen's a talent, and he's great, but I don't know. It remains to be seen. So who knows? Maybe Aaron Glenn can make something out of the season. But I think the Giants are definitely ahead of the Jets this far into the season so far. I know it's preseason, but this far into the season. So
yeah, I mean, again, like we talked about, I mean, Buffalo. There's a lot of pieces in place. Josh Allen is obviously one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. To me, there would have to be a lot going on there for them not to win that division. And again, we've talked about this right away. Coming, we don't even really have to talk about the defense, because the excitement in Giant Land is that they actually had quarterbacks that were able to get the ball down the field. But like Phil Simms said, he goes, starting that telecast on, opening the telecast, he goes, I want to see, a sustained pocket, where a quarterback could actually move up in the pocket and, and read, go through the progressions and actually make, some good throws down the field. And, you saw that. And maybe the bar, maybe like my Eagle friends tell me, the bar is set so low. It's the little things, that perk you up, because after all, it is preseason, and preseason, really means nothing. But I think from the Giants' perspective, the changes that were made, you're seeing improvement, in two preseason games, which to me, that's all you can ask for as a fan. And again, the bottom line is, we can talk about how they look now, how improved they are, how good the quarterback room is, they're deeper in the offensive line, how good the receiver room is. But the bottom line is, you got to win football games. There's no other way to put it. You have to win football games. And, you have two divisional games. The Giants' Achilles heel has been their division, and they have two division games right off the gate, a perfect world. I think with this team and the way things are going and the way they've been starting the last 2 years, they come out 1-1 going into the Chiefs game. I don't think anybody could really be disappointed from a record, perspective. They come out 2-0, then I might have to start, going back to church. Then if they come out 2-0.
yeah, well, and then who knows? I mean, but it's going to be that's a tough ticket though. Kansas City on that Thursday night, so prime time. But
it's a Sunday night game, and it is what it is.
Is it Sunday or Thursday night?
That's Sunday.
Sunday night. Sunday night. Okay, all right.
Yeah, Brad Delaruso's coming in for the weekend. I thought he was staying.
Oh yeah. No, he's staying with Ronnie Barnes.
I thought you were having him over. He's staying with Ronnie Barnes.
Yeah, it's a business trip. He's just going over my portfolio, but
yeah.
But
it comes back to that again.
Yeah, you want to delve into the Yankees, or what do you think about that? Or think the New York has moved on from baseball?
Nah, I mean, listen, good series against the Cardinals. Listen, you could talk about the Yankees all you want, right? And I had a conversation yesterday with somebody, and a buddy of mine who's not a Brian Cashman guy. The first point out of his mouth was, he goes, they didn't trade for a starter. And I said, to be honest, nobody traded for a starter. But here's the thing. Everybody wants to attack the bullpen, and rightfully so. Devin Williams, there's been a few guys. But the bottom line is, sustained success is not going to come if you have to delve in 4 innings a night to your bullpen. Your starters are going 5 innings. It's almost like we're happy that Rodon pitches good for 5 innings. And, for the bullpen to go 4 innings, that's not a sustained model of success. They're in the American League. The American League is not strong. I expect them obviously, to get one of the wild card spots, but again, how much, how can you how does a manager manage, 4 innings, which seems like every single night.
And like you said in previous show, the bullpens are getting taxed.
They're taxed.
They're
taxed. But, again, it'll be an exciting finish, and hopefully, it seems they went south, as did the Mets at the same time. And, I believe they'll get one of the wild card spots. What will come out of that, I really don't know, because, can you trust, who do you trust in a big spot? Max Fried looks human now after the All-Star break. Who are you throwing game 1 to come back? Game 5, whatever, game 5, whatever.
Yeah, who's going to be the one? Who's going to be the 147 guy that you're?
Yeah, I mean, it's just there's a lot of holes there, and they let the third base situation go on for longer than it had to. I mean, I know McMahon is playing well since they made the trade, but again, it comes down to the pitching, and it'll be interesting to see, how these guys perform, when it comes to the postseason.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I mean, we'll still watch, but I'm wearing a LSU Bowl jersey. Who's your favorite Giants LSU player? I'll give you a list.
I have an answer right off the bat.
Go ahead.
Mine all time has to be from my childhood, who I met in person numerous times, Leonard Marshall.
Oh, he's up there. I'll throw you a couple of names. Michael Brooks.
Yeah.
There's Kendrick Allen.
Michael Brooks was a Bronco before a Giant.
Yeah, he was a Pro Bowler in '92.
Yeah.
Chuck Wiley. He's another one. Brief stint with the Giants. Corey Webster.
Yeah, Super Bowl champ.
Second round pick in 2005.
Yeah.
Cordell Flott from the current, and then Malik Neighbors, obviously. Rodney Young. He was drafted second round. Corey Raymond.
Yeah.
Didn't get too much playing time out of Clarence LeBlanc. Another one, Greg Jackson.
Number 47, Super Bowl winner.
Yeah. Ryan Clark began his NFL career with the Giants and went to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
OBJ.
My son had a nice conversation with him the other day at the Giant Jet preseason game. He met him on the concession line.
Oh, no kidding. No kidding.
It's a nice picture. Said very down to earth.
Ruben Randall, remember him?
Sure.
He had a lot of potential.
A lot of potential.
Michael Clayton briefly played with the Giants, but he was more at Tampa Bay. Yep. Russell Shepard played a couple of seasons.
Yep.
Brandon Winey played in the 2000. Lance Smith, he was a solid contributor, but I think he was. But the biggest surprise I had, remember Brad Wing, the punter?
The punter, absolutely.
Still playing with San Antonio in the UFL.
Yeah.
So that's my little.
I'll go back to answer your question from a childhood perspective. Leonard Marshall, really is my favorite LSU guy.
Yeah, and he can't argue with that character. And then, like I said, probably had one of the greatest plays in NFL history, not only in Giant history. So
terminated Joe Montana's career.
Yeah, certainly did. How's the team look this year? You said you had a lot of potential.
What are we talking? What team is that?
You're talking about your team.
My team. We have a good group of girls. We're at it every morning. They're
6:40.
6:45.
Is that because you can't get fields there in Woodridge, or what's going on?
You beat the heat, baby.
And how
we go in the summertime. We pretty much go at practice. We go in the mornings just to beat the heat. But once school starts, obviously a different story. We go after school for the most part, or at night.
And
good group.
Football. How do you get ready for the game?
Football for high school football.
Yeah, you gargle. Aren't you the voice of Woodridge football?
No. It's you just go and you just. I turn into Bob Shepard, a little PA announcing, a try to get the crowd going. But, Woodridge football, a new coach this year, good friend of our friend, Jim Higgins.
Okay.
They got a lot of pieces coming back. They got a good matchup in week 1, which is scary, which is actually next Thursday they open up. And, look forward to it. I actually enjoy, and I enjoy coaching the girls, but I enjoy as the PA announcer as well.
All right. Well, we'll keep you updated, but well, listen, Jerry, I'll pass it along to you. This is episode 65, Giants Jets recap from preseason. Giants recap. Look for more football in the future. Look for more guests in the future. But I'll pass it along to Jerry to take this episode out, unless you have something else pending.
No, like Jimmy said, this closes episode 65. Our good friend Bart Oates, even though
The lawyer, the counselor, Bart Oates.
Even though he went to the 49ers too as well. He had a brief stint after that, but he was a good Giant, both Super Bowl, part of the Suburbanites. Again, great episode. We covered the Giants as they had their second preseason game against the Jets. The Giants close out this Thursday with the Patriots. And before you know it, everyone, I always say this, it's unfortunate that the summer ends, but the end of the summer brings the beginning of the NFL, which will be here before you know it. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon. Take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Take care, Jerry. Talk to you soon.